Flygirl, Chapter 22. Ladies, have you ever heard of a B-29 bomber? Lily and I exchange glances. We're in a briefing room at Birmingham Army Air Base. We arrived last night with no further instructions than to see the commanding officer. Colonel Leland Griffith is a kind-faced man with graying temples and a gruff voice. He made sure we had a hot breakfast at the officers' mess before our meeting. It's 7 a.m. Lily and I are in our dress blues. I clear my throat. Yes, sir. It's experimental, isn't it? Colonel Griffith looks uneasy, but he nods. Do you know what the flyboys call it? The superfortress, sir. It's the right answer. Colonel Griffith relaxes back into his chair. I feel a flash of pride. I've done my homework well. Did you ever wonder why the Army designed a plane big enough to fit a platoon of elephants? Lily answers first. No, sir, but the Army must have its reasons. Griffith actually smiles this time. Good answer, Miss Lowenstein. He pauses, takes a glance at a file on his desk, and frowns. Ever see one? No, sir, we reply. There is an honest-to-God twinkle in the Colonel's eye when he asks, Would you like to? Sir, yes, sir. I break into a face-splitting grin before I can stop myself. I look at Lily, and she's grinning too, so I guess it's okay. With another nod, Colonel Griffith rises from behind his desk and leads us to a hangar at the back of the airfield. In those few moments, with the crisp blue Alabama sky above us and the comfortable sound of transport planes overhead, I feel as if I could float away on a cloud. Or worse, wake up and miss all the excitement. The B-29 is the largest plane I've ever seen. It's a mastodon compared to the little ATs and P-50s we've been flying. Daddy's little Jenny would fit in the belly of this plane 3 times over. This is the real deal. Flying her will take skill, strength, and a little bit of luck. My fingers tingle just thinking about it. Lily claps once in delight. I can't help but ask, what kind of bombs are they carrying in this thing? At last, the wrong question. Griffith frowns at me. None as of yet. Damn thing's harder than a mule train to fly. He stops in the shadow of the starboard wing and turns to face us. Let's get down to brass tacks, ladies. I've been reading your records, so have a few of other folks on top. You've got 3 days to learn how to fly this thing. Lily and I blink at him. And then what? The Colonel glances up at the wing soaring over his head. He looks small compared to the big bird. And if he looks small, I know I look like next to nothing. And then, he says, we'll see. For one whole day, Lily and I sit in a private office in the officer's compound, poring over the specs of the plane. Nobody bothers us, just a few flyboys who haven't seen girls in a while accidentally knocking on the wrong door. The way we figure it, the B-29 must be experimental. It wouldn't be the first time a WASP had flown something new or difficult. Planes like the PT-19 were considered too powerful until a WASP showed she could handle it. Lily and I are determined not to let the WASP down. We study every inch of our plane, and when our eyes get crossed and start seeing double, we have dinner with the Colonel in his private dining room, and we get a ride back to the boarding house off base where women visitors have to sleep. On the second day, Lily and I head back to the hangar and visit the B-29 in the flesh, so to say. With a work light in one hand and a manual in another, we explore every detail. It's a big plane, like I've said. It takes all day. By the end of it, we're both pretty sure of ourselves, sitting in that giant cockpit. Colonel Griffith joins us to explain the next day's procedures. Normally, there'd be a crew of 11 that goes up in these birds. Pilot, co-pilot, 3 gunners, and a crew to handle targeting and dropping the bombs. Since tomorrow is just a lap around the airfield, Colonel Griffith wants us to take 3 of his men up with us. So you get the real feel of her, he says. We both know it's so the men can take over if the girls choke. This is fine, Lily says with her piloting chair. We've both strapped in and are getting comfortable with the reach of the controls. Oh, yes, it is, I agree. This is a big plane, and she's going to be heavy, and a sack of wet sand to pull off the runway. But it's a treat just sitting here. No siree, these 2 girls won't fail. So far, our stay at Birmingham has been pretty quiet. There's all sorts of activity on the base. when we drive on, and in the morning, and when we leave at the night. But nothing that involves us. That's why it's a surprise in the morning of the third day when there's a crowd out to greet us at the tarmac. It looks like just about every doughboy this side of the Mississippi has shown up. Colonel Griffith rides out of the hangar with us in his Jeep. He's in full dress uniform, so you'd think he had planned the whole thing, but he sure looks upset at the sight of all those soldier boys. Aw, hell. Who called them here? Sir, Lily and I are in our zoot suits and pigtails. One of the privileges of being full-fledged wasp. No more turbans for us. I've got butterflies the size of eagles this morning, and facing the masses when I'm in my flying jammies doesn't help. Griffith drops down in his seat. Keep going. The driver takes us past the crowd of soldiers and into the hangar with the B-29. He drives fast, but not fast enough for Lily and I to miss one of the men shouting, "Another Widowmaker!" Excuse me, sir, but what's going on? Lily asks. Begging your pardon, I add, but what did he mean by Widowmaker? Every wasp knew about the first Widowmaker, the B-26 Marauder, a plane that tended to crash on takeoff. I look at the colonel in the eye and wait for an answer. Colonel Griffith actually blushes. He takes off his hat and steps out of the Jeep. A full 30 seconds pass before he turns to us. Ladies, you have 20 minutes to get in that plane and get it down that runway. We've got a crowd out there, and we might as well use it. Lily and I exchange glances. I don't like knowing what's going on, but this is the Army. We don't have to like it. We just have to do what we're told. Lily frowns at me and then shrugs. We both take a deep breath and start our flight check. While we're going over the wings, the rest of our flight crew shows up. Colonel Griffith, who has been pacing by the Jeep like a daddy-to-be in a hospital waiting room, introduces them to us. Ladies, this here is Captain Hank Rhodes, Lieutenant Davis Warner, and Lieutenant Daniel Sparks. We shake hands down the line. Captain Hank is a square-jawed, dark-haired man, about Thomas's age. Davis Warner and Daniel Sparks could be twins, except Warner has brown hair and Sparks is a redhead. They both have freckles, blue eyes, and a wide grin. They can't be much more than 18 or 19, but then again, I'm only 21. We're the Bombardiers, Sparks says once the colonel has returned to his pacing. We'll be flying navigation and radio today in case, well, you call Sparky. I know what's the in case is. The Bombardier seat is in the nose of the plane. If he can't fly this thing, it's the worst spot to be in an emergency landing. I guess I can't hold that against him. Thanks, Sparky. You can call me Jonesy, I say. I'm afraid. I'm just Lily, but that'll do too. Lily shakes Sparky's hand. Sparks, let the ladies finish the flight check. Everything's got to be perfect if we're going to pull this off, Hank says. His voice is surprisingly high for someone with just a square jaw. He looks like Clark Gable without the mustache, but he sounds like Mickey Rooney. Thank you, Captain, I say, and Lily and I double-check the wing before moving on to the fuel line. Ready, Eddie, Lily finally says, checking off the last of our list. I nod and open the door of the plane, Lily's wheels up in the step ladder. Gentlemen first, we say. Sparks seems to like that. He chuckles, shakes his head, and climbs aboard. The men settle into their stations in the compartment behind the pilot and co-pilot seats, and we head out of the hangar onto the runway with our little fanfare. I'm surprised the colonel didn't have us leave under cover of darkness. He seems so displeased by the crowd outside. Then again, maybe this is what he really wants. I just had an idea, Lily. What's that? Fly us all to Acapulco for supper? No. I mean, it seems to me the colonel is using us as an example. You and I both know that the Army can keep a secret when it wants to. That's for sure, Lily agrees. Well then, why do you suppose there just happen to be 60 soldiers with nothing better to do than watch us this morning? Lily frowns, then smiles. Because they want to see what a work girl can do. I nod. With the Widowmaker. Lily grins. Oh boy, this should be a hoot. What are you ladies talking about up there? Captain Hank has stuck his head into the cockpit. Lily and I put on our best innocent faces. Just the weather, sir. Go buckle in. We're about to take off. We taxi into position and run an engine check, firing each engine separately from left to right. At full throttle, B-29 engine will rattle your teeth. Lily and I grin at each other. This plane beats a Jenny any day. The engines work just fine, so I power all four of them up to a deafening roar. The plane jostles and shakes like a wild horse trying to throw a rider. The green flag waves, and I release the brakes to start off our long takeoff roll. The B-29 takes twice as much runway as smaller planes to get off the ground. We roll forward, gaining speed as the runway rushes beneath us. "Ready, Lily?" "Ready, steady," she says with a nod. I flex my arms, preparing for liftoff. The end of the runway looms before us. I grab the stick and pull. My muscles go tight, but the nose of this thing is barely budging. I grit my teeth. It's harder to lift than even I thought it would be. "Ida?" Lily sounds worried. She's got her hands full with levers for the landing gear, but she sees me struggling. Got it, I say, but I don't. Not yet, anyway. And then I do. The nose of the plane lifts so quickly, you'd think I was apologizing for reacting so late. We bob up into the air, a little wobbly, but in the air all the same. From there, we climb steadily, and the engines smooth out from a bone-shaking roar to a sweet, steady hum. Turns out the B-29 is like a seagull, awkward and ungainly on land. But boy, it sure can fly. Lily gives a little cheer. I hear it echoed from the navigation station by Sparky. When we reach our cruising altitude, I loosen up my arms. My biceps are sore, but in a good way. I guess all those years of picking up Otis Willison's laundry finally paid off. Would you look at that? Lily points out the window. The entire airfield is looking up at us. I bet their mouths are hanging wide open. I certainly hope so. We veer off a wide loop of the airbase. That's all Colonel Griff wanted. A victory lap, so to speak. We circle the airfield 2 times for good measure. If only Daddy could see me. They used to say that colored folk couldn't fly, but look at us now. Lily is in her own private world of smiles, too. It's a good feeling. All the hard work and training it took to get into the WASP is paying off in a lump sum. "Smooth flying, ladies," Sparky says from the back. Without even turning around, I can hear he's all grins. I am, too. "Thank you, Lieutenant Sparks," Lily says for me. I'm too busy lining up for the final approach, and I take a deep breath. And now for the tricky part. "Landing gear ready," Lily says. "We've studied it every which way, and in the end it's the same. The B-29 has trouble landing. She tends to stall out and just drop. Some planes are too big to glide to a stop comfortably. That's why the Army doesn't have more of them around. It's probably why they're calling it the Widowmaker on the ground. And that's exactly why we're here to fly it." "Here we go," I say. Suddenly the plane lurches like an old drunk. The steady drone of the engines stop. When it starts again, it's too quiet. "We've lost an engine," I say, trying not to panic. The plane wobbles. I grip the stick with both hands to correct it. Lily says nothing, but the knuckles gripping the sides of her seat are white. From the compartment behind us, somebody shouts. Somebody else swears. "Status, boys!" I call out. My voice is getting too high. I belatedly pull up from the final approach. We can't land. Not just yet. "Davis is hurt. Got his hand smashed climbing through to the gunnery. What happened?" I shake my head. "What the B-29's probably famous for. One of the engines stalled. We're running on 3 now." "Number 4's on fire," Lily adds. My eyes go wide, and I spare a quick look. Oily black smoke streams away from the right wing. I can't see any flames, but that doesn't mean they aren't there. "That's just peachy," I mutter, and try to figure out what to do. There's a shuffle, and Captain Hank appears between Lily and me. "I think it's time I take over," he says. His eyes are on the airfield. The B-29 shudders around us, limping in. It's only a matter of time before we lose another engine or the fire spreads. "No." I stay in my seat. "No, sir. We've trained on stalled planes before. I know how to handle it." For the first time, the look Captain Hank gives me isn't friendly. "Well, you may notice that the B-29 isn't just any old plane. I'm surprised your arms didn't give out just getting us into the air. I'll be hanged if I'm going to get caught in a crack-up just because some dame wants to prove a point." "It's not our point, sir. It's Colonel Griffith's." Lily finally found a voice. I'm glad, because whether I like it or not, this plane is heavy, and keeping her steady is like wrestling an angry gator. Any energy spent trying to convince the captain makes flying even harder. Lily's right. It's enough to make Captain Hank hesitate. Before he can think of anything else to say, Lily picks up the radio and asks the tower for Colonel Griffith. I make a full circuit of the airstrip while they connect us to the radio in his jeep. With any luck, the engine fire will burn itself out, or will land first. Captain Hank, I say, trying not to grit my teeth, please strap yourself in. We don't want any more injuries, do we? Captain Hank looks at me, and then at Lily. He shakes his head, crosses himself, and returns to his seat. What should I tell the colonel? Lily asks. I shrug as much as my grip on the stick will allow. Tell him the truth. Lily looks at me, and her brown eyes are wide with worry. What is the truth, Ida? I've seen you land a pursuit plane in this stall before, but this? We're burning. For an instant, we both see it. Patsy's valiant blooming into the flames like some terrible flower. I take my eyes off the view in front of me just long enough to read the look in Lily's eyes. Don't be stubborn, Jonesy, she says. Be safe. Right. I don't say anything for what feels like forever. It's funny how danger can make time stand dead still. I think about the plane I'm holding up for sheer force of will and the 4 souls on board with me. For some reason, I think about Thomas running up that country road trying to get to a doctor before death could get to Daddy. I think of Mama trying to get me home, of Jolene trying not to tap toes to the radio when Mrs. Wilson was in the house, of Patsy never letting old unhappy Martin tell her how to fly. I take a deep breath and look at Lily. She's my last friend on earth right now. I'd never do a thing to hurt her. I can do this, I tell her, and as I say it, I know it's true. We can do this. Lily looks at me a moment longer. The radio crackles. Griffith here. Lily hesitates. She takes a deep breath. Colonel Griffith, this is Lily Lowenstein. We have a slight problem up here. Engine 3 is stalled out. Number 4 is on fire. It's procedure to have emergency services waiting on the ground, if you want them. This is your show, Colonel. We'll do your job. We're coming in on the next circuit. Lowenstein out. The radio lies silent. It'd be nice to have those fire trucks out there, I admit, just for comfort's sake. Lily blanches. You said you could do this, Ida. I nod. I can. Still, I shake my head. Oh, hell, say a prayer, Rabbi. We're coming in. I don't know if Griffith has gotten the fire trucks out or the tarmac. I don't know if he's trusting we can land. My eyes are. On the horizon, as it lines up with the white lines down the runway, the plane is shuddering now as we drop lower. The men are silent in the bombing bay, probably straining their ears to catch what happens next. What happens next is like nothing I've ever done in training. We drop from the sky and another engine fails. That was number 1, but you're clear. No smoke, Lily says. 1 engine fire we can handle. I throw in the towel at 2. Lily, I need your help, I say through clenched teeth. It's just too much. The plane is nose heavy and unwieldy. Lily undoes her straps, wraps one around her shoulder, and leans over the chair to help me. We groan from the straining of the wings. We pull for all we are worth. Silently, I swear, I scream, I pray. And then we are level, and then we are landing. Too fast, too damned heavy fast. All the weight in the nose of the plane smacks the ground with force. The tail of the plane almost spins. We're so top-heavy and off-balance. Hold it! Hold it! I grab Lily by the arm. She slips but keeps her hand on the stick. I stand on the brakes with both legs. Not too fast, but we could roll. The muscles on my legs burn. My fingers ache from holding the stick. And then we stop. We are on the ground, safe and sound. Look, I say to Lily. At the end of the tarmac, a single fire engine lights off, trundles towards us, out of sight of our audience by the hangars. Lily starts to laugh, and I join her. We laugh until there are tears come streaming from our eyes, down our cheeks. Captain Hank and his boys are on us in a second. They're hysterical, sir, Sparky says. That makes us laugh even harder. Captain Hank, who's had more experience with the hazards of flying and with the hazards of women, merely shakes his head and follows us out of the plane. Dames are crazy, Sparky. Don't you ever forget it. No, sir, Sparky says seriously. I won't.